First recorded before I say anything else. There we go. We're recording. So I wanted to do a live stream now because I was recording the video and then I was like, you know what? Let's just do a live stream instead. Because oftentimes with planned live streams is that you just need to hope there's some good PA, and oftentimes there isn't, and you're kind of forcing it. And then yesterday was a live stream that we did, and it was not really any interesting PA going on that we could really act on. Now there is. I think this is a very interesting and decisive moment in time where we're going to see what Bitcoin wants to do for the remainder of the week and for the remainder of the month. So this is going to be a short one, but I just want to discuss it because it's just nice to have some good PA to explain it with. So first of all, to recap very briefly what we talked about yesterday, is that we have our monthly statistics. So basically my main message was that okay, higher prices for the month are still in play in my opinion, but there were a couple of caveats, and the caveats were on the weekly. We're gonna dive into that. Give this a second to load. There it comes. So we have 2.4% of months that took out the monthly low, and 100% of months move further than 10%, right? So my base case is saying that, okay, I don't believe this is going to get taken out. All right, that's the base case. And 100% of months see further displacement. So therefore, if we're going to see further displacement, it's likely going to be to the upside. However, at the same time, I said, okay, the current weekly close is very close to the current monthly close, which means that if we are going to see that further displacement towards the upside, we will want to see a reversal this week, right? Because you cannot imagine that we're going to see a bearish week this week and then this happens next in 2 days, right? Monday and Tuesday. Of course, it can happen. It's the market, but it's not very likely. So the main idea is okay. So we're gonna have, if we're gonna see those bullish month, or at least more higher prices on the month play out, we need to see a reversal. And it's not impossible because we know that the weekly high is weak. We have 94.4% of P1s weekly high that have a bigger wick, right? That have a bigger wick. So only 5% of weeks would actually hold such a high. And therefore, if ever such a reversal were to happen, this would not be a weird place for it. Also, we are currently at, support levels, in my opinion. So it's possible. Then at the same time, I said it's not something I would bet on. So yesterday we were here on the stream. I said it's not something I would bet on right now because I also know at the same time that yes, it's possible, but these kind of highs usually hold in bearish trending days. So if you have impulsive weeks, and it's still possible will become one. And also look at this: 14.1% of weeks took out the weekly high, and 100% of weeks move further than negative 3.9%. So the idea I gave yesterday is that, okay, so if I would long this, because this would be my invalidation, right, for a reversal, and we'll get into why this is an invalidation in a bit. I have my confidence intervals here. Say I go to the 80% confidence interval, that's a 2.2 risk to reward. I mean, a little bit less, let's be accurate. 2.2 if I would have longed that here yesterday. And I cannot justify that because I know I'm betting on something that happened 14.1% of the time in the last 3 years. And if you do the last 2 years, which is valid for time statistics, I'll actually create a functionality. Shogun cannot hear me. Can other people still hear me? Before I continue? All right. So please someone tell Shogun that he needs to restart. So oh shit, that's not what it's supposed to do. So 9.6% of weeks took out the weekly high, right? So my message was saying, okay, well, this is not something I'm betting on right now. I cannot bet on this on a 2.1 because I know just if I really put it into a system, and this is my, it really obviously depends on your system, then I cannot justify a 2.1 RR on something that happens like 10% of the time, right? Like if I do that over the long run, I'm gonna be unprofitable. So what I did say is, okay, but what I would be interested in is basically two options. One, we would get bullish New York session statistics, and I would do a New York session bullish play that could potentially accelerate it towards the upside. Yesterday, I decided not to do that because I didn't like the setup. And two, what I said is another option would be that maybe tomorrow we do this, and then here I would be interested in towards maybe a long. And let's break that down because now obviously we are at this place and it's becoming more interesting. It is becoming more interesting because this is the invalidation not only for high prices on the week, this is the invalidation for high prices on the week, but so if I have to, this is the bullish scenario, then we have the bearish scenario, which would be this, and you're looking for lower. Let's get that red. And this is the weekly low is the invalidation for it, right? Now we already know that P1 flip risk is low, but if we take this low right now, then it's going to be very, very, very improbable to still turn around because it just very rarely happens. And we can look at that because if we go to the time statistics and we take 3 years of historical data, then we see here, this is the, oh no, let's like 2 years actually. If we see here the number of P1s formed after the current time, which is basically the projected P1 flip risk, and again, I urge you to watch the time tutorials. There's a video on it. But basically what this means is that, okay, if we take the low now, then P1 flip risk will be this, 2.9%. So this metric, if we were to take the low now, it would say that, okay, if we would take it right now, then only 2.9% of weeks would do this. So it's already very low probability. And taking this low would make it even less of a probability, right? Or probability is not the right word, but it would be a very rare occurrence for that then still to happen. And this would be therefore my invalidation hard. And a wick is enough because I get the question a lot. Just a wick, like a tiny wick like this, or that's not a wick, tiny wick like this is an invalidation for me. Then I would be looking at bearish confidence targets, which is, by the way, I'm going to get into that, a very logical thing to do given these statistics that we saw on the weekly. But so taking this low would therefore make it very improbable to turn around. And I also have the bearish confidence target on here, right? The bearish 80% P2 confidence target. And then you're looking at, somewhere below here. And yesterday I made the case that even if we get the bearish week, I would not be taking to take out the monthly low because of that monthly statistic of 2.4% of months take out the monthly low. So that would mean this would become the smallest monthly candle in the last 7 years or something, right? If we do not take that low, which is not improbable because we also had the smallest weekly candle, and in general, these were also not big weekly candles. So what you need for a small monthly candle is obviously multiple small weekly candles, so not impossible. So that brings us to the conclusion that now we find ourselves in a very interesting spot because we can now say, okay, so we have the invalidation close by, which means that the RR is now suddenly a lot better. So, where we had yesterday that, what was it, more or less 2 RR, and now suddenly it's 5.6, something you could justify a lot more. Would I take it like this? No, I would still wait for the New York session. In my case, my rule system is simple. I actually don't take the new system I'm building because I haven't had time to trade actually in a long time. But now that brighter data is a little bit better managed, I'm getting some more time. So I'm building systems on the weekly, and my rule system simply doesn't allow me to enter before New York open. That is basically the window I operate in. But what I want to see is bullish New York session statistics. Why? Because this is still a high risk reversal play because of these statistics, right? And again, this is just my system. You don't have to use my system, but only 14.1% of weeks take out the weekly high. So even when my monthly bias is saying like, yes, this, realistically speaking, this monthly high would go more often than it wouldn't, I also know that on the weekly time frame, and maybe it's good to dig into this because a comment often heard is, well, isn't the weekly time frame stronger than, or isn't a monthly time frame stronger than a weekly time frame? Isn't the weekly time frame stronger than a daily time frame, and so on? Not necessarily. It also really depends on context. But in general, I don't use it like that. The way I look at it right now is that, okay, the weekly is going to determine the monthly. So I'm just going to look at the weekly because it's more granular, right? The weekly is more granular. It's more actual right now. The monthly is just based up on the entire month. But now basically the weekly is allowing me to look at, okay, what's going to happen in the last week of that month, right? It's just a more granular view. So I prefer to look at the weekly and therefore make my case saying that, okay, if we take this, then we're going to see lower prices on the week. And therefore my monthly bias of high prices is also invalidated, right? So this basically moved my invalidation for high prices on the month to this, right? This was the invalidation, and now it is here. So if price does something like this, and the New York session is then going to, I have to go to on a lower time frame, and the New York session is going to do something, maybe like this. Here I have an entry trigger. I went over that entry trigger yesterday, so go check out that stream. Then I'd be very happy to enter that. And the reason I would wait for a lower time, I wouldn't always do this. A lower confirmation, lower time frame confirmation, in this case the weekly, or the session, the session for the weekly, is because these statistics are, it's just not in my system, not something I want to bet on without further confirmations. However, each their own. You could do it because, or at least you could decide that you want to do it because there is still two things going in your favor. There is the monthly time frame, which is still higher, and there's the weekly P1 that is shit, right? Only 5% of weeks would hold it. So, and we also know that if ever it's going to happen, it would have to be now, right? It would have to be now, and this low muscle. Personally, I am waiting for the New York session, but once again, it really depends on your system. I mean, let's just I really don't get involved during London. London is actually pretty good now for higher prices, 15.9%, 96.3%. Yeah, well, I'm just not interested in London, but like I said, each their own. Could be that therefore I miss it, but you wait for the best. You wait for the best. And one more point is that actually yesterday, because that there's two basically main systems that I'm using, and one of them is really based on this being low and this being high. So therefore, and then having a proper RR. And yesterday, it was in the evening, I did enter this because the RR was simply at this point, I was checking it, and the RR on the overview page was really good. Now it won't be, but if you go to the overview page, and I was on, because I was looking at the overview page, and then I saw that the RR to this was basically 2.5. So I want to explain something. My main bias is actually still higher. I explained that extensively yesterday as well. I still believe in this reversal. So then you might ask, okay, why the hell take this? That's because I simply have a system, and that system is telling me to take it. P1 flipper is low, 9.6%. P2's later, 88.5. P2's further, 100%. Right? So this very low, this very high. And then the RR to the P2 confidence target, I mean, now it's 0.88, but yesterday this was 2.5, 2.6, or even 3 when I was looking at it. So then I was like, well, it makes sense. It makes sense to do it. And in this case, also extra important or interesting to look for a long here, because in that case you would be in a long and a short, and yes, one of them would get stopped out, but the other one would most likely win big, because reaching the 90 or 80% confidence target would not be unreasonable, so to say. It's actually interesting that this London session has no wick, and it doesn't flag a warning at all. Let me check that. Session, I want to see the session in the 4-hour, get the last year on. And then I want to see the raw metric. Okay, so the 4-hour has a wick warning on the London session. Or, well, the 4-hour candle, I should say. So yeah, I am simply going to wait. I'm simply going to wait. In my case, there is a couple of scenarios. Either the London session will not give me, or the New York session will not give me any confirmations, and I will simply do nothing, because once again, I'm waiting for confirmations, because these weekly statistics are not very good. right? And I am assuming 14.1%, 100%, just not something I can go against. If I see those confirmations on the New York session, then on the New York session here, then I'd be happy to enter stop loss below here because this is the invalidation. And I'd be targeting here because if we reach this, then this will be a hit as well, is my belief. And if we don't get it, I am simply waiting for lower, and I would not expect the monthly low to be taken out, but I would also not expect the um, reversal to happen anymore, right? So you're looking for those weekly confidence targets that we can. Let's get the various ones on there as well. So today's a very important day, right? Because it's Thursday, and you know that, okay, if you're gonna see this reversal, then you kind of know that, okay, probably today is the day it's gonna have to at least start happening because you're now at these local range lows. And if tomorrow is Friday, because we know Saturday not much happens. Saturday, Sunday usually are ranging. So basically, in the next 2 days, you want to kind of start seeing some momentum upwards, right? So it's really this is the time of opportunity. So actually, in my new weekly system, the days where I do nothing is Monday, Tuesday, and then Wednesday, Thursday is the time to look for entries, and Friday, Saturday, Sundays is the time to look for profits. Monaco, do you always place your stop loss at levels that are derived from statistics in the short case weekly P1, or are there times where you place it closer? I usually now place it at the P1s, but that's simply because it allows me for a very simple rule-based system. And I don't have the statistical I don't have the statistical, what do you call it? It really and I lost words. The statistical confidence with not other types of validation. My it also really is in line with my goal of really creating a very data driven system. And basically, the two systems that I have right now are simply very, very, very focused on statistics, and they are combined with some basic TA. With some basic TA. So for me, usually, yes, I am using P1 as an invalidation. It could be a lower time frame P1 as well. Like I said, for example, if I would have taken here a session long, I would be happy to put my stop loss under the session. So say, for example, this was a session play, this was the trigger, and it would have gone here. I mean, if we see an acceleration, I would leave it here, but most often I would just use the time frame itself. And that's why I also have the RR to P2 confidence now, because I can see if there's anything that is even, if the RR to the P2 confidence is good enough for it, right? So that's the overview page, what it does really well. So in my very short answer, in my system, yes, I usually use P1, but it doesn't mean you don't have to. It's just for me, I don't have a good enough system oftentimes to define another stop loss. Other people might have it, right? It really depends on your system. For me, this is what works right now. So I usually use P1. Can you summarize your systems in a PDF or something? It would be really valuable. Yeah, I might. That's not a bad idea at all. Not a bad idea at all. There's two main systems. I went over one of them yesterday, and one of them, well, plenty. But that's not a bad idea. I might make that. All right, so that's my bias for today. So today is going to be a very interesting day. It's going to be a very interesting decider. As always, I am not going to guess. I am going to wait. I'm going to wait for the session to open and see if there's any long. That's the only thing I'm interested in right now. If not, then I will let this play out towards the downside, targeting this. So let's see. Let's see what happens. Well, it's basically three systems actually, because this would be a reversal system. You know what? I will put it in a PDF. It will be good to quantify it as well and get a proper rule system laid out. I will put it in a PDF. I will do that. So right now, basically what I'm in is the continuation play, because this was a good RR with P1. So this is a continuation play that I use with this being low to really recap it. So the P1 flip list in time being low, let this load. This being low and this being high. and then RR being good. That was the case here, combined with some very simple TA with the fact that we were simply deviating above, putting here, deviating above a local range. No, JTP ended my live stream. All right, I'm gonna finish this on stream. Okay, if you're rewatching this, so, JTP accidentally cleaned the stream. That's hilarious. Thanks, JTP. Bro had enough. All right, so I was just wrapping up anyway. So, this is now the continuation play, right? That strategy is simply, okay, low P1 flip list, high of this, and good RR, simple TA. That's what I'm in right now. That's what I'm going to let play out. If we don't, and then the other that I'm looking for right now is basically a reversal play. And for that, this low must hold, as we know. So this low must hold. So I'm looking for confirmation on the session, and then possibly this could be a nice reversal play with a very good RR, which is why I'm willing to take on if there is two things. I need to see lower time frame confirmations because it is a high risk play, right? 14.1% of weeks would take it. However, it is also higher RR, so I can get away with a lesser win rate, right? It's as simple as that. And there is a case to be made because we have the weekly confidence target, or the weekly high is shit, and we also have the monthly statistics. And then the third system I explained yesterday in detail, where basically I let the market decide, but that setup doesn't always present itself. It won't present itself today on the daily. It doesn't present itself on the weekly this week either. So, maybe on the session it will present itself. All right, that's it. Thank you all for tuning in. I'm going to upload this stream in case you tune in later. JTP, I don't know how these live streams work. I just saw my face pop up and panicked. Shit, I didn't even notice that. That's hilarious. All right, well, wrapping up, guys. So for now, nothing to do for me here than to wait. If New York opens and we get a bearish New York open, or we already take this, then that is the answer. There's nothing to do there. So once again, this low is the invalidation for high prices for the week and for the month. If this low gets taken, I would be looking at lower prices somewhere around the 80% confidence target. So that would mean that we're printing the lowest monthly candle in existence. So let's wait for the New York session to open and see what happens. All right, guys. Thanks very much. Hope you have an awesome day. Catch you guys on the next one.